Welcome to the Daily AI Show. Um, Today is August the 9th, I believe, and
September.
September 9th,
It's
not
September.
I'm still fully into summer mode. So today, the topic we're going to talk about is the AI power and permitting crunch, and it's really about the amount of energy that AI is taking up more and more and more. And today we're going to be joining me to talk about this topic is Brian, Andy, and Junmi. So I guess to start it off, like just in terms of inference, right? We saw the number of 700 million people using, or according to OpenAI, 700 million users using ChatGPT every week. Then also all the other models related to that, plus video models, audio models, agents, and so on. The amount of just power, compute power required to power all that. We're starting to see even Claude Code. They had to limit the capacity because people were running it 24/7, doing coding something, building apps, and they had to limit even the max up to the max, their max tier. So I think we're at a junction now where are we going to get this, where are we going to get the energy to do this compute? And there was I think Google came out with how much energy does like one query take, and I think it was what, a quarter teaspoon of water or whatever that is. But even if it's that much, well, if 700, 800, 900 million people, 1 billion every week, that's a lot of drops of water, right? So I guess like there's a couple different ways that I guess I could take this. One is, how big is the power spike? How big is it really causing? So you know, the International Energy Agency says that global data center electricity use could double by 2030. The regional grid operator, so Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland interconnection, says its capacity prices for 26, 27 are jumping nearly 10 times. Now, is AI the reason? Not sure, right? Then, um, and then the second part of that is, how can we really build any faster, right? We already have regulations and rules that there are checks and balances. Now, I know in terms of this administration, they're trying to cut that red tape faster, but how fast can you be? You can only build so fast, right? And then what are some of the new technologies that people are exploring, nuclear, things like that? It's like, how fast can that alleviate some of the pressures that people are using all these tools? So I'll leave it there, and yeah, open the floor.
Well, I love that you're referring to, us as if Canada isn't completely, covered by their hydroelectric power, and threatening in the context of the exchanges between our belligerent administration and Canada's to cut off power to the states in the east that depend
Yep.
entirely on Canadian hydroelectric. So anyway, that's just an aside on the political front. But what we have also on the political front is we have, because of AI, demand surging for electrical source, and that's driven by data centers, but also by many more people using their computers, I think, than was probably true in 5 years ago. And so, because AI is becoming a much more proficient assistant, if you will, and easy to access than was, the deliberate, use of, say, Google and other tools online. So more and more people are accessing it. So there's all kinds of demand pressure, and the advent of nuclear reactors and gas turbines, those have multi-year backlogs. They won't come online for years. They'll try to accelerate them, And, the Chinese design for small nuclear reactors, those, are probably going to benefit China largely, but we don't have a comparable solution in the pipeline right now. So our
I'll push back on that in a second. I'm going to push back.
Okay, good. I'm glad you will. Our administration has decided that renewable sources are a scam. And so that defies the data, which is that in recent years, 90% of additional electric generation capacity in the United States has come from wind and solar. That's, there haven't been a lot of other sources, or perhaps not a need for a lot of other sources than was being supplied by the addition of solar and wind. But now we're simultaneously increasing the demand, and we're cutting off solar and wind through regulatory fiat. And what's going on? Yeah, this is a disaster of our own making, that is going to accelerate the consumption of fossil fuels necessarily in order to support that energy demand, shifting to natural gas generation, which isn't a big thing today, but natural gas capacity under construction and pre-construction is doubling from a year ago. So they're kind of switching over to that. To the profit-making benefit of all the companies that are in the fossil fuel industry who get natural gas as a result of pumping oil and so on. So I wanted to just paint the broader picture of, it's not something that we collectively as the United States citizenry are worried about. It's something that we ought to worry about now, because the people who have the controls, the power controls over our energy sources are doing things that just don't make sense at all.
Well, I want to push back on some of that, but there are things that are happening, at least from the political side, that, and without, I don't intend to be political, but like the White House AI action plan is trying to help with this. Now, my opinion on this is that it's probably not enough still, right? It might just end up being paperwork and stuff. But some of the things that come out of that are, it has about being global AI dominance. It's considering, frames permitting reform as a geopolitical weapon. The plan proposes over 90 federal policy actions, including expedited federal permitting for qualified projects, including data centers that require over 100 megawatts and a $500 million investment. Now, some of the things that it's attempting to do, one that stands out to me is the 18-month maximum review timelines for nuclear reactors versus a historical 5 to 7 year process. It will typically, traditionally, I always remember nuclear reactors can take somewhere in the order of 20 years to actually come online.
I hope I'm still alive when that brilliant solution comes online.
I don't think that those type of our traditional type of reactors are the solution. I think it's actually fusion, but I'll get to that in a second, because there are really innovative things happening. And I'll talk about what Microsoft and Helion are doing there. But federal land identification for data centers and power plant sitting. We've heard about that, about using federal land. That could definitely cut through some red tape we'll have to find. Modified Clean Water Act permits for data centers, new categorical exclusions under NEPA for AI infrastructure. Now, here's the deal though. Like look, progress is progress. I hope a lot of that stuff happens and some of this red tape is cleared up. Any administration, I would be hopeful for that, because estimates, as you guys have pointed out, are looking that we need to basically quintuple our power output over our projections towards 2030, 2050, right? Because of AI, demand, power centers, all of the above. It also was a snowball rolling downhill. It's picking up speed and mass. So as people use AI, there's more use for AI and more people get on board with it. So whatever we're doing now is like the slowest as it'll ever be, right? It's not going to maintain this pace. It's only going to continue to up and to the right. Not to make this a China versus US or anything, because I don't think that's really the conversation, but the difference here is stark, which is China has built 37 nuclear power plants versus just the 2 the US has over the last decade. Now, AI and the demand and the power demand and data centers, we've only really, I'm not saying traditionally, like in a common, conversation like this, not experts, obviously. I've only been talking about the need for data centers really in the last 2.5, 3 years, right? Since ChatGPT and all that, people said, oh, this is going to be a problem. That's at least when I saw it start to come into conversation. I am sure many people were sounding alarms about needing more data centers and more power. So I'm not suggesting that, but that's stark, right? 37 power plants versus 2. Obviously, much different. We talked about it many times on the show before. Much different way that things can get approved and regulatory approval and all that in China versus something you're going to find in the States or probably even Canada for that matter. Now, I think there are some really interesting technologies on the horizon here. And yes, I know the whole thing about fusion is like, great, we'll see it by 2050. I actually don't believe that to be the case. I think not only, but one of the companies like this is one that Microsoft is working with, Helion. And Helion is already ramping up. They're already showing progress. Now, they are, I think it's called Tenga is their first one that they did. And I'd have to go look here really quick. Trenta, excuse me, I had that wrong. Trenta was their 6th prototype, and it concluded operations after what Helion calls commercially relevant fusion conditions. Now, that is not to say that is putting out net positive energy. We're not there yet. So this is iffy, right? Some people don't believe that they'll be able to do it. Microsoft has seen enough, and they're already breaking ground, I think, around DC and other areas that they believe, and there's significant penalty if they do not make this 2028 timeline for bringing this online. To do that, they need to move from Trenta, which they're done with, to their next one is Polaris. That's their 7th generation, which Helion says is expected to show net electricity. And then Orion, which is what most people know it as, the Helion Orion project, that is the first grid-connected plant to fulfill 2028 PPA. That's a term that they use a lot. This sequential path underpins the acceleration claims versus traditional steady-state tokamak timelines. And we've talked about fusion reactors before and tokamaks, and I only have a basic understanding of that, but what we've talked about on the show. So will they make a 2028 timeline? Well, Microsoft has put a lot of significant investment into this for this to come out, and both them and Google are investing in 50 megawatt fusion capacity. The 1-year ramp up is for Helion. Google's taking a different approach with more traditional nuclear, and they have stuff going on with their Kairos project that they're invested in, but that's supposed to be a 2030 operation. So will Microsoft get ahead by investing in a new technology that is unproven up until this point, because we haven't seen net electricity yet from this company, but they believe they will, in which case we're coming online with something net new, a new technology that doesn't go through steam turbines, by the way. It goes direct to grid. So it's already cutting out a lot of the extra infrastructure that would typically be involved with it. Well, there's a lot of obviously things about fusion being much safer, obviously, and not having runaway thermal events and things like this. So I get excited when I see this because I go, yes, we do have a critical need to ramp up our energy. Right. It's inevitable. And I think whatever we were predicting, we're absolutely wrong by 50% or more, maybe 100%. Maybe we're off by 100%. So whatever it is, it's double, triple, probably whatever it is, right? What we think it might be for needs for AI, because we don't always know what's coming down the line with AI. And that could significantly impact how much energy is actually needed, North America, US, whatever, involved with it. But I do get excited. I'll just wrap it up by saying I do get excited about these new projects. And by the way, they're not the only ones. I think we could talk about fossil fuels. We could talk about, diminish, at least in the States, diminishing, your renewable resources, stuff like that. But this is where I get excited because I think this is the path forward that's going to be required. I see this I wish the United States would almost take fusion as a man on the moon type situation where they say we will have reliable fusion by 2030, like man on the moon type stuff. I believe that's what it's going to take. Right now it's going through private investment, the Microsofts of the world who have deep pockets, but I do wish that there was a much more universal push towards this because I think this is what the solution is. Okay, I talked a lot, but that's where my brain is on this, and this is where I get excited. But there's a lot of ifs in that, and everything I said, there's a lot of ifs. Maybe it will, So
I think the one piece that makes a lot of sense, and kind of alluded to this in a couple of shows back, where you need some sort of national effort. Like, this is where, hey, we're going to beat the Russians to the moon, right? This could be, hey, we got to beat China to whatever this looks like. We got to have the infrastructure pace. Everybody has to come together to this. It's just a lot harder this time because the goal isn't as apparent, right? It's not like not visuals, like we got to get here. Like that's the goal of, the United States leading the way to the moon, right? What are you trying, like the United States leading the way to what? Like artificial general intelligence, and then a bunch of people be like, well, it's gonna, I'm gonna lose my job because of this. So it's different. There's a lot of different challenges to that. I also think too, as the costs now, I guess if I wanted to put it to the floor, if the costs of intelligence is decreasing, and we've seen that significantly, but the energy consumption is increasing, you still have the Jevons paradox where, the cheaper something is, the more like there's going to be more mass use. And it's not like energy's getting, like there's an abundant source. It's just like you were saying, Andy, we're not really trying to go after that abundant source where there's quite a lot of it, right? Whether it's solar, whether it's wind, still trying to go after some of the traditional sources. So I guess, like, if that's the case from a national effort, I'm not sure we'll ever get there. I'm not sure from that, in that spot. Now, the question I have though is, can AI help us get there? Because as it gets smarter, can it find more efficient ways let's say just pure inference? Is there more efficient ways to do things? And I think we talked about this in several episodes back, where we talked about what are some of the new technologies that potentially could cut the costs of the energy use of our AI systems.
I just got a quick word on this one. So I think we need to make sure that we can take a top level view of this. It's not so much like you said, Carl. It's not so much can AI solve for its own power issues and things like that. It really is a matter of ramp up and implementation, right? Regardless of the technology, there's always going to be a year or two that is going to be required to build anything. So far, even if we had fusion right now, and it's Helios, right? Or Helion.
Helion.
Yeah. So, side note, I know a guy. He's an engineer friend of mine, and he's really looked into them, and very, very promising work that they're doing. Okay, nice. I'll leave it at that. But what I wanted to focus on is we don't need AI to solve the energy issue for AI. We do have the technology. So it's not a technology issue for generating enough power.
Right.
What it really is a capital issue. It's the ability to sell the narrative. Hey, if you want to invest in AI, build out this power infrastructure. The technologies exist today. We can do it sustainably. We can do it with wind, hydroelectric, thermal, all of those different methods. It's just a matter of putting the capital to get it done. Right now, I think AI, with the last thing that you said, is AI can help develop more efficiencies. And I think that's probably where we'll get the evening out, right? Because right now the power spikes are huge, right? It's just throw more compute, more power use, and that's how it's scaling. I think if AI is applied at making that more efficient, just like with micronization, So micronization, you want to take something that's a really big thing. Remember, computers used to be the size of warehouses, and now they fit in the palm of our hand or on our wrist, right? So, so those are all just efficiency gains in for the level of output or productivity and things like that. So I don't think we have to like wait or force AI to go, okay, create the perfect solution. We already have all the technology we need. It's just convincing the powers that be to put the money in those methods or those processes to then create a more sustainable solution and have AI create additional efficiencies on top of that.
So a couple points. One is that I think that we're talking about two different dynamics. One is the long-term strategic development of new technology sources of sort of limitless power, and that's fusion, and that's a long-term process. For example, Helion is promising to deliver electrical generation in 2028. So we have 3 years before their planned commercial implementation that attaches to the grid. And as with nuclear systems that we currently have, the fission nuclear systems that we have, typically those double their timelines and triple their budgets, right? Because of the difficulty of implementing grid scale nuclear energy generation and doing it safely. Fusion has some advantages that way, and I'm hopeful that only 3 years from now we'll see the addition of fusion to our grid. But now, on a short-term basis, what's going to happen is everybody's electricity prices are going to skyrocket. So, the anti-inflation initiative that was let's get the Republicans in power so they can bring down the cost of home budgets. Let them add tariffs and cripple current short-term energy introductions to the grid that are possible in the near term, so that everybody's costs go out through the roof. And meanwhile, everybody's going to lose their jobs because of AI. I hate to be like a Debbie Downer here, but man, the confluence of negative factors that are being driven by our political system are really, really, like at the end stage of my life, after observing all of this through my life, they're really disturbing, really disturbing. So now let me give you an alternate vision. Suppose for the moment that as a moonshot, instead of going after fusion in 3 to 5 years or 3 to 10 years, we simultaneously or separately did an initiative that would have most of the homes in the United States that have access to reasonable periods of sunlight. If we had all of those get free solar added to their roof in our infrastructure budgets, and take all those demands off the grid, go off the grid with the local requirements, and that would support all kinds of electrification at the home, including charging electric vehicles rather than burning fossil fuels, in alignment with the initiative to try to preserve the planet and our environment by reducing fossil fuel consumption and carbon delivery into the atmosphere. That's possible, but it's just not Republican, right? Sorry, it's just not where we're going with our political decision making. And I wanted to put solar in my home this year. The permit process and the backlog of installations is going to push me past the availability of the energy systems incentives that are in the tax code right now, because they've been eliminated by the Republican Congress. So no longer can you get any kind of financial support from the government for electrification of your home. I'm just mind boggled. Sorry. I feel so depressed. I may have to just turn off my video and cry a little bit over here.
Well, I listen, I'm only bringing this up because my buddy Greg Connolly is this guy right here. Greg Connolly is the CEO, and I just heard that they came out of stealth mode on this company, Andy. So, maybe Cora, I'll give a shout out to Cora, Kora, and Greg. Greg's a great guy. You know Trifecta Nutrition, Andy?
No, I don't.
Trifecta, CrossFit, really big in MMA. Anyway, he started that company. Him and I worked together years ago. He was actually the original owner of my previous company, Nutrition, while with my wife and I. We worked with Greg and took it over and stuff. So anyway, he did Trifecta for years, and now he's on to home energy and stuff like that, and battery storage or whatever. Anyway, I'm gonna make it a thing. Go check it out if you want to. Greg's a great guy, so I would say for that. But like, hey, maybe I'll just get you in touch with Greg. He's up in the Sacramento area. Like maybe we'll just figure this out for you, Andy. And
that'd be great. So question: Does the Cora system, if you have any familiarity, I don't have any familiarity with it.
I don't think anybody does. It literally just came out of stealth.
Does it provide generation, or is it more about energy management in the home?
Power blocks, smart panel. Maybe it's just it doesn't look like it's
it looks like it's a storage
cellular
system like Tesla Powerwall and Franklin and the others.
Yes.
But that's helpful in terms of time shifting energy demand at the home, so they're not all occurring at the same time.
Yes,
but it's a substantial investment, and of course no longer has the tax incentives. Cora probably would have qualified for the 30% coverage of your total installation cost of a solar battery system. That doesn't have to include solar. It can just be batteries. If you put energy storage batteries in your home today, if you could get it done, it would be paid back in a tax credit of 30% of that cost, and that's going away. The reason, we've got to save money in order to provide tax benefits to the very, very wealthy.
Well, I brought up the Cora thing, but it was really just because I happened to know it and Greg, and it was in the news. But I get your point, Andy, which is that, and I think you're saying it too, Jimmy. It's not like we don't have the technology. There's I don't know what that quote is. We have the technology. What is that from? I don't know. That's from a movie or something.
$6 billion man.
There you go. There it is. $6 billion. Yeah. Thank you. I was like, I know that's a quote from something. So, the technology is there, and yes, big swings like fusion are going to be part of this solution. Smaller swings, smaller relative, as in bringing back up 3 Mile Island and 2 of the reactors there, which Microsoft, by the way, is also involved in and has a lease on that. And they're going to get so much of that power, and they're helping out with that or whatever. So they're certainly not putting all the eggs in the fusion basket. They're looking at other ways with nuclear. We've also seen the ones that are like the shipping container size nuclear reactors that are teeny tiny. Then all the renewables, all the other ways that we've gotten energy. And then I like your point, Andy, that, there's also the, micro way of looking at this, which is to just relieve your house as a burden on the system, right? On the entire energy grid. And so but you're right. Like, it has to make financial sense for the families to do that. And God knows we've had this. I'm in Florida, right? So we have an abundance of solar. You would think every roof could have solar at this point, because God knows we can fill up the batteries. We can all get off the grid, but it doesn't make sense for Duke Energy, and it doesn't make sense. And they fight in the legislation and all this stuff. I'm not picking on any one particular, presidency or anything like that, because the reality is they're all in there. They've all got their people that are in DC lobbying for their this and that and the other. And there's a lot of power and a lot of money involved, obviously, in traditional energy, like the Duke Energies of the world, which is what we deal with here. But all that to be said, if there was less restrictions just for me, and I could make financial sense faster for my family, and crucially, that it was seen as a definite improvement to like my house, right? So if I sell my house, I know I can get 50% out of that. Like, you know, if you do a kitchen remodel, you're going to get more percentage back from that money you put in. You put it in a nice garden, well, it's probably a sunk cost because you wanted a nice garden. It may not help you sell your house, and you may not get 10,000 more for the house for it. But with solar or any renewable energy, I don't want to just say solar because there's other things out there like wind turbines on roofs and things. But it all goes down to people go, we need this energy, AI is coming, whatever. And they go, oh, but we don't want to look at turbines on the hillside. We don't want to look at turbines on the top of the roofs. We don't like that. That affects my view. I think this is not a US issue. I think this is across the world. People are going to have to decide what's most important to them. And as energy costs continue to rise because of our nearly insatiable demand for what we want with AI to how it's going to impact world, people are going to have to start making some concessions about what ultimately is more important to them. I think companies like Core and all that are probably well placed right now because whatever we're seeing in surges in prices for energy right now are probably nowhere near where it'll go. And people are going to feel this push. And then companies are going to be able to come in and say, look, we have potential solutions for stuff like this. If we can help you hold some of your energy at your house, that means we can do it at off-peak times and save you money and things like that.
Yeah, by the way, I did just while we've been talking, I looked at Core Energy, and what it's doing is energy trading. It's not strictly speaking about solar capacity being added to the grid and being delivered into the batteries that Core supplies. Mm-hmm. It's a large battery structure with a really smart trading system that does arbitrage with energy prices across the clock, right? So the 24-hour clock, and the system trades for you even while you sleep, and basically saves you money. And their claim is that it's so effective, this arbitrage opportunity, selling power back to the grid when it's not needed in your home, mm-hmm. That it'll eliminate your bill even without solar generation.
That's pretty impressive. Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
One thing I wanna add here too, which is a bit of an issue, is water, right? Because you need water to cool in terms of the data centers. And I think one quote here was like a medium-sized data center can use over 100 million gallons of water a year in terms of sustainability. Now, ideally, it depends on where you build it. Hydro could be, like a simple solution, like if you kind of near the coasts. But when you start building data centers in landlocked areas in the middle of the country, like, one proposed here in Alberta out in Grand Prairie or Grand Fork or Grand Cache, I can't remember which Grand it was, there's not like a steady water supply necessarily. So that's also a big thing to think about, because obviously the use of water in areas where people are thinking about in terms of data centers as well. So all your opinions, what are your outlooks in terms of AI use plus building of these data centers like Stargate, and then the energy requirements for all of them? Like, where do we think, like, Cora could be one, but what are some, I know we've talked about like technology solutions, but what's kind of our outlook in the next 3 to 5 years as it's just ramping up faster and faster and faster?
Yeah, go for it, Jimmy.
Yeah. In terms of, I guess, a overview look at what I foresee, if this is the prediction part of things, I think there is an immense amount of momentum behind the narrative of AI, right? Some of it is good, some of it's bad, but there is I've described it as a wave, right? And if you've ever had to deal with a very large wave, there's only a couple of different ways that you can deal with it, right? There is dive through it, ride it, or run for the hills. Each of those has their own benefits. Diving through it is usually the safest way. But I use this analogy because it's a matter of how you or how we collectively deal with that momentum, right? Uh, there is going to be some major strains on how the technology is implemented, right? And those strains are going to be on on the average person, right? We've already mentioned a few. Energy costs are going to go way up. Absolutely. Why? Because we didn't start implementing AI after our grid and energy production was great. Our energy production and grid were crap already. It wasn't enough for our own uses now. And so now we're just adding on top of it. I think the idea or the mindset where people automatically think, oh, okay, we're going to do this thing to get additional things. We want to add on top of it. Well, we could always replace, right? Uh, Simple solutions. If we don't want to burn more fossil fuels, then we just turn to, like, for example, instead of in metro areas, don't use an individual car, use mass transit. But how is that narrative played out? What are the forces that are, working against that? And those are going to be the conflict points. Same thing with the water. The water, while initially a huge issue, still is an issue because water is fairly finite in its current form. But we could dump a ton of money into desalination plants. The only reason they don't do them now is because it costs more than taking over a river or a lake. That's the only reason. It costs more money. Not that we can't do it, not that there's some technological limit. It just costs more money. So what I think the biggest solution or the quickest solution for a lot of these power hungry questions, these sustainability or climate environment issues, is do you think AI and the progress of this technology is that valuable? Then pay for it. If you have the money, if the big people with the capital and all that have the money, and they seem to be, because they're dumping billions upon billions of dollars in all of these unicorns over the last couple of years, well, guess what? A part of that is power infrastructure. All right. So might as well, build up wind and solar and all of that. And just for those who think that wind are giant turbines that have huge, propellers. No. Now they spin this way, and they can be as small as this to generate a kilowatt of energy.
And I was saying in the chat too, there's plenty of bladeless versions.
Yeah, absolutely.
That take it's like the Venturi effect. That's going back to my firefighter days, but it takes advantage of the way the wind comes up the side of the buildings and actually scoops it in.
Scoops it up.
And actually, I was just saying this to Gwen in the chat, like, no, there's, and I recommend people go, if they're interested in learning more about that, go check out Matt Farrell's YouTube channel called Undecided, because he actually talks about this quite a bit and has done several episodes on it. But they look like HVAC boxes. They're not, this, I was saying in the chat, like the idea that we all have big spinning blades on the top of our house is an outdated idea, or that the rolling hills of France or something are going to be, that's what's going to be in your town. Like, no, there's other solutions. And you talked about water, and I just want to bring up, I love this company, Source Global. I've been following them forever, but this is a commercial deployment of it. But every one of these, what looks like a solar panel, because it is, takes moisture out of the air and turns it into drinkable water. Now, this has been around for years. Source Global has been around. You keep seeing more and more, like an MIT study or Caltech will come out with something similar where they're doing it. But the technology already exists at scale to pull viable water out of the atmosphere. And if you're thinking like, oh, I'll just show you what it looks like up front if they have a smaller one here. There you go. That's what it looks like, each one of the devices, because you can put it on your house. Now, it wouldn't do all the water for your house. It would be like basically for the drinking water, but it tells it here. It's a couple of, I don't know, it's a couple liters or a couple of gallons a day. It's enough for like a family or 3 or 4. And you would literally no longer need the water supply to handle that. Now, washing machines and such might be a little bit different. Anyway, I'm only bringing that up as yet another example of technology that exists right now, Jimmy. But but why aren't we seeing this going global? I guess why not global, but like big scale. Why is this not like when things like this, whether it's Source or some other company or whatever, when you look and you go, oh, we can pull water out of the air, and by the way, it's not like we're going to run out of humidity in the air. It's an absurd number, tiny percentage where like you're not gonna suck the humidity out of Florida if everybody had global source global devices on their roof. That's not the way that works, but it exists. So why aren't we seeing more farms like this? And if that's the case and that's what we're investing in, who's upset about that? Who's upset about getting net new water that could help maybe a data center with its water needs that is pulling it out of the atmosphere? And nobody's being affected by that. I don't understand sometimes, because it just seems like, guys, we see this out there. Yeah, I mean, Gwen's saying maybe it costs too much. Yeah, but get the government involved. Get somebody involved who can bring that cost down.
It's a matter of not seeing any kind of return. But again, this comes down to the short view versus the long view, right? If you are a major company and you want to see 150 years in the future success, then, and your company being being around that long, why don't you think out to 150 years or 200 years? What's that going to look like for you? So spend the money now. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe we need to look at the longer term. And I think AI is a longer term view. Grid, infrastructure, power, environment, all of these technologies that are too expensive because we don't see an immediate return. It's like, will you see enough of a return after 200 years? Oh, okay, cool. Then it's worth it to do it now.
I agree. What do you think? Any other thoughts, Carl? Anything on this one? Have we hit it?
I think so. I think like we can keep going, like, making our predictions or thinking about what are the next steps. But this is one of those things it's a little difficult. It's kind of out of our control. And at the same time too, you have to think that all the major AI companies, and I'm not just talking about Google, OpenAI, I'm talking about all the other companies related to, doing multimodal, all those companies who there has to be a thought there from their CEOs, their executives, like, how are we possibly going to power what we're creating? Like, it's and more so with the bigger labs, but like, I'm curious to know how, like, from a mid-journey perspective, from an ideogram, from an 11 labs, from a Higgs field, like, I don't know if this is part of their thinking or it's just, hey, we got to build and we'll think about that later. But I'm really curious about what their thoughts on it as their user base grows and we get more and more people using AI more on a every day.
Yeah, this may be a subject for another show that we'll do about a company called FAL.ai. I don't know if you guys have ever heard about it, but it's a major player. What's that?
FAL, the one that for image generation, video generation. Yeah, I've used it quite a bit for the newsletter and stuff.
Yeah, FAL.ai is not just image generation. It's in the data center business. And it has accelerating capabilities that make inference for image generation and for text generation faster. And it's used by almost all of the major players. So they don't just depend on their own home-built data centers for that, although Google may. I think Google may have enough data center capacity that they're just using their own data centers. But FAL.ai, I did a little research on it, and I think it's worth discussing it and showing what that system stack is at the generative AI level, because OpenAI, Meta, a bunch of others, they use FAL.ai to get fast and efficient inference generation. And they're also doing longer term developments to provide their own data centers. But right now, FAL.ai is really this unheard of company. Well, Brian's heard of it, but this unheard of company that's really instrumental in the delivery of data center compute And they're the ones who have to figure out how to support the demand for their services at their data centers with new generating capacity. So it'll be interesting to extend this discussion into what's AI's position on energy projection and cost projection for energy in the coming 5 to 10 year time frame.
Okay. So we're gonna wrap this show up because it's more of a, I think it was more of a hypothetical, like not a hypothetical, but more of like, hey, what are some of the things that we, what's up in the future in terms of AI and how it's going to impact all of us. But so tomorrow we have obviously our news recap. I don't know what you guys think, but it seems that this is kind of a calm before a storm that is likely brewing with all the labs, right? I haven't heard very many like rumors or anything like that. So I'm very curious. Maybe it's a nice time to kind of chill out before one after the other after the other. And one thing too is we're all waiting for the major large language model drops. But like if anybody actually has looked at like a Higgs field, if you looked at all the stuff that they've been dropping the past 2 months, I don't know if anyone's had a time to try it, but it's just the multimodal space is just ridiculous in terms of drop after drop. They don't get as much news as the major model drops too. So we have I think a surprise show on Thursday.
Yes, and Anne will be here with you guys, and Marie will be in with Jimmy and Carl, hanging out with you guys. She's going to support because me and Andy aired out, and I think Beth is still out. So
it'll be a fun episode on Thursday. And is it our recap?
Yeah, on Friday.
On Friday, yeah.
Kind of whatever the squirrel, whatever floats our boat that day. It's always a fun conversation.
Yeah. So if you want to continue the conversation, please join our community, and also subscribe to our newsletter too. With that, Jimmy, take us away.
Aloha.